What would you do if, a day before your wedding, you realized it was all a mistake? Would you stay? Or would you run away? This is the story of how I almost married the girl of my dreams, and how that dream turned into a nightmare. After I returned from the Army in 2016, my life changed drastically. I met a girl named Emily. We had already seen each other a couple of times in the company of friends, and she always seemed bright, interesting, like someone who carried light around her. I courted her for a long time, and only after 6 months did she allow me to call her my girlfriend. Emily took relationships extremely seriously. I wasn't frivolous either, but her caution was different. It was as if she was weighing whether I fit into her picture of a perfect future. At first, everything seemed fine, but soon I began to notice strange things. Sometimes, when she talked to her mother, Linda, she would fall into hysterics over trivial matters. I try not to pay much attention to it. After all, a person can't behave like that all the time, right? But the further it went, the more red flags appeared. In her family, Emily was called the princess, and she acted accordingly. The whole world revolved around her desires. Her love language was only one: gifts and demonstrations of status. Flowers, expensive things, attention 24/7. I loved her and tried to adapt. But even then, something inside me quietly whispered, "Be careful. This is only the beginning." In 2017, I proposed to her. I bought a gold ring with a small diamond. Emily looked at it and said, "My friends have bigger stones." I tried to make a joke, but inside I felt a blow. That was the first moment when I wondered, does she love me? Or does she love the image I'm supposed to maintain? From that moment, the wedding preparations began. Quarrels, resentments, and hysterics became the usual background. I tried to hold on. I worked, took side jobs, rented an apartment, saved money. I believe it was all just temporary difficulties. But the closer the wedding day came, the louder my inner voice became. And then one day, something happened that became the point of no return. Wedding preparations are always a test. But for us, it was a test of survival. Emily increasingly threw tantrums. Her mother, Linda, interfered in everything, from choosing an apartment to discussing the date. Even the superstition, "never marry in May," became an iron argument for her. I understood. This woman would always be in our lives. But I didn't know how deeply. I worked without rest, took side jobs to cover the expenses. And Emily complained that she was tired of the preparations. In her understanding, all the responsibilities were mine. I tried to be patient. And then came the day when we had to make the invitations. Emily was an artist, a creative person. But suddenly she said, "You know how to use Photoshop. You'll design them." I suggested we sit together and work on it. She refused. She said, "I'll control the process through messages." That day, I made 20 different versions of the invitations. She commented on each one with new insults. "You're talentless. You can't do anything. You're impossible to deal with." And by the end of the day, she sent me a message. Mom helped. She made a proper design. Even I could see it was a terrible design. But in that moment, I felt completely crushed. Usually, I stayed silent. But this time I couldn't. I wrote to her, "Tonight, I'm coming over. We need to have a serious talk. I don't want a family like this." A second later, her tone changed. "I lost my temper. I'm sorry. Everything's fine. Let's just forget it." But I couldn't be stopped anymore. That evening, I went to her place with my parents. We sat down for tea. My father spoke gently. "The most important thing in a family is respect." Today, Emily crossed the line. "Our son isn't perfect either. Let's all calm down and see the wedding through together." And then Linda exploded. She shouted, "You came into my house to attack my daughter. How dare you?" No one expected that. I tried to speak calmly, but she wouldn't listen. She started mocking me for stuttering. I had struggled with it since childhood, but her taunts weren't about an illness. She wanted to humiliate me, so I would feel like nothing. At that moment, I realized this woman would never become my family. And Emily, standing beside her, did nothing. She only slipped the ring off her finger and showed it to me. No one else noticed, but I did. Later at home, my parents tried to dissuade me from making rash decisions. "Things will get better," they said. But I already knew the answer. I said, "There will be no wedding." The next day, I called Emily. She refused to meet me somewhere neutral, only at home. It was obvious Linda wanted to control the conversation. I arrived. Emily deliberately went for a walk with her friend, leaving me waiting. Half an hour later, Linda called, "Come in, let's have tea, let's talk." Her voice was sugary, almost gentle, but I refused. When Emily returned, we went up to the apartment. Linda greeted us with fake politeness, but I didn't give her a chance. I said, "There will be no wedding." At that moment, Linda's mask fell off. She began shouting, insulting me and my family. "Jewish pigs. Traitors. You're nothing." Even Emily stood in silence. Her stepfather, the only reasonable person, only nodded sadly. And I listened and understood. This was the end. But ahead of me, there was still another trial. And that's when something happened that no one expected. I was sitting in my car right outside Emily's house. The engine was running, but I wasn't moving. On the passenger seat lay an envelope with money, part of the payment for the wedding. And on my phone, a dozen missed calls from her were glowing. In my chest, it felt as if someone was pressing down with a brick. I understood. If I went into the house now, I would never come out. I would become Emily's husband, her perfect project, and my whole life would turn into an endless race. Buying, proving, fulfilling her expectations. I looked in the rearview mirror and, for the first time in a long time, saw myself. Tired, drained, but for the first time, honest. I took out my phone and dialed her number. She answered instantly, as if she had been waiting with a stopwatch. "Where are you? Everyone already knows you're coming. Mom is worried. The bridesmaids are waiting. We have to discuss decorations." I took a deep breath and said, "Emily, there will be no wedding." For a few seconds, there was silence on the line. Then I heard a scream. She couldn't believe it. She was yelling so loudly that I had to move the phone away from my ear. First came threats, then tears, then begging, and then her mother's voice. Linda took the phone and coldly said, "You are making the biggest mistake of your life. No one will ever love you the way Emily does." I wanted to laugh, but instead I simply said, "At last, I will love myself." And I hung up. After that, I sat for another 20 minutes. Just sat. I didn't feel joy or pain. Only a strange, new feeling, freedom. Consequences the first weeks were hell. Emily wrote every day. Her mother called my parents. Our mutual friends split into two camps. Some supported me, others called me a traitor. But with each week, it became easier. I started sleeping peacefully. I started eating without a heavy feeling in my stomach. For the first time, I realized how heavy that love had really been. 6 months later, I heard that Emily had married another man. And you know what? He was richer, older, and ready to buy her everything she wanted. And that's when I finally understood it had never been about love. It had always been about status. Today, looking back, I am grateful to that 26-year-old guy who sat in his car, dialed her number, and said no. I know. If I had stayed silent, right now, I would be living someone else's life. But instead, I am living my own. Finale, and now a question for you. Would you be able to call off a wedding at the last moment if you felt it wasn't your life? Or would you go through with it, even knowing it was a mistake?